I learned a lot more about suicide, obviously, by jumping into this. But I also listened to a lot of things while I was doing other things. And one of the things I found was I remember what it was called, audiophile, something like that. It was on YouTube. And it read through the list. Like I thought it was, like I had listened to a bunch of interviews and stuff. But it read through the list in like this girl AI voice of all the bands that listed, that are listed as influences. And it was awesome because it mispronounced a bunch of them. It was like the Peck mode. It was awesome. That's what I learned, that's a thing somewhere.
Well, I think even Depeche Mode on their like third record or second record said that they went through and they were modeling their whole entire record on, the second album.
The second
Suicide,
album, yeah.
Which was like, holy shit, How else can you say somebody so big has really kicked that much ass in all these years and not a lot of people still know about them? That's the crazy part to me, is a lot of people they're still like, oh, Suicide, maybe I've heard about it, but have you really listened to it?
Right.
That's why
Bruce Springsteen did that song in 2014 on that High Hopes album.
Yeah, and he always plays Dream Baby Dream at the end of his shows.
Yeah.
Which is...
So he actually put that on an album in 2014.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's got to be somewhat in the zeitgeist, you know what I mean, that we're seeing.
Yeah. I think they are so far ahead of their time that for years to come, it's still going to be one of those outsiders love. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's going to be so far removed, but people that love it are going to have the best camaraderie community because it's an outlaw misfit something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just crazy. They were just two dudes from Brooklyn, and they created something that nobody is really on board with still.
Right.
Except for the elite few. It's weird. It's just so weird.
But again, I think that, what's strange about that is there's, just take that list of all those bands and you only read out a few of them. You didn't read them all.
No, I couldn't list them all.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Each of those bands, for the most part, have a huge fandom of their own.
Created their own styles as well from that style.
Exactly. So you think that those fandoms would filter down at some point, though, and maybe that's why we're seeing that, suicide resurgence, if you will.
Yeah.
And I don't mean resurgence, not like it's huge and in the zeitgeist, but it's like, or not huge and in your face, but it's out there.
Yeah.
In the ethers,
we're starting to see it now. Yeah. More and more people, because even the guy that wrote the book that I'm reading right now, he said that after the funding fell through for his original book, he started talking to all these people, and all these people were listening to Suicide. They were just having stories about watching Suicide, or they would say how Suicide influenced them on this, or how they would do that. And he was like, I just started to notice a commonality in everybody in New York at the time. It was all about suicide. So then I asked both of the guys if I could do this book on them, and they were like, yeah, I would. I mean, why not?
Right.
And they were totally absorbent to it. They were like, all right, let's do it. Rev's always been like very, very, very good with, encouraging people to do what they want to do.
Right.
At the same time Alan Vega was.
Right.
So they weren't like, oh, I'm Alan Vega, Martin Rev from Suicide. They were like, fucking, you know me?
Right.
How do I know you? Like when Henry Rollins called him and he's like, okay, you want to meet me? Why? Every one of them was just so cool in that way.
Just down to earth, humble folk.
Yeah. And they knew what they had done, and they were still kind of just like, man, we love doing it, which was the coolest part, I think.
Which is why you had them together for so far. And you could kind of tell in some of their interviews, like, they probably had some arguments that split them up for a little bit, but it seemed like even they had said that they were like always together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, you could see them having coffee every morning,
Yeah.
towards the end of their life, sitting down and watching some crazy French Jerry Lee Lewis movie or some shit.
Right.
Just because. They seem like cool dudes to really just kind of hang out with, and they wouldn't be too in your face and over the top, but yet they wore their influences and their hearts on their sleeve in a way that they put it in their art.
Right.
And that was another piece of them,
I
the
agree.
piece of them that you saw, was who they were, but they put out that crazy, awesome side of them into their music, and they created a legend pretty much. And they really are legendary. I mean, I think that's the best way to kind of wrap it up there.
There you go.
They were a legendary band that will always be legendary. And whenever the first erosion from the Stooges kind of chips away a little bit, you're going to start seeing more people say Suicide was that second. Right. I think they were really part of the first wave of real punk rock. And then, of course, you get the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, mainly the Ramones, in the 70s, really doing their own thing, not giving a fuck. And then it just trickled down to where these people, where you end, not necessarily end in, but you kind of get to Nirvana, and Nirvana was like another really influential punk band that wasn't punk rock, in the usual sense. They were like, we're going to do how we want to do it. Mm-hmm. And that carried that torch up until that point where now I don't know where everything's at, Mm-hmm. I mean, because there's really a lot of plastic punk,
Yeah. And not to go back to this because we talked about it on an earlier Quickcast this week, but I would say like those Desert Sessions are very punk rock to me because they just do what they want to do, and there's not a specific style assigned to it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
You could almost say the Queens are like that too. The Queens of Stone Age, because they literally change their style up all the time, and from 1 minute to the next, you don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, which is awesome. So. Yeah, maybe, they were the ones to pick up the torch.
And I'm sure there's somebody newer than that I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there's not.
Yeah. Maybe Flasher or something. I don't know.
Right.
One of those bands. Well, let's wrap it up. That was Suicide. That was our little piece of drop culture.
Don't commit it.
Yeah. And Mitch said 3 words.
Yeah.
Listen, 4. Don't commit it.
Throughout the whole time. So,
see.
That's okay. I thought it was a good show. We learned a lot.
Learned a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay. I talked a lot about my favorite band.
That's perfect.
Suicide.
Absolutely. I learned a lot making this episode. So, yeah.
A lot of good interviews out there on YouTube. A lot of good interviews. Again, watch that movie Punk Attitude. You'll really kind of see, how everybody was just like, God damn, Suicide was fuck. They were everything at the time. Watch anything that has to do with Alan Vega. Alan Vega he seems like a normal everyman, just like, Martin Rev too. They seem like everymen, you could see them sitting down and you'd be like, man, you're Martin Rev. Yeah. Whatever you think. They're just cool dudes, so, and the music speaks for themselves. It's just one of those things that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. Maybe if I have a tape recorder, and that would be the last thing that I listen to. Before I pass away will be Suicide's first record, and then at the very end of it I'll be like,
okay,
boom. It's called Brock Boom. Well, that wraps us up on this week's edition of the Dropped Culture podcast. We were talking about Suicide, and then if you really like what you hear, hit us up on the socials, hit that like button, give us a review.
Smash that subscribe.
Yeah, I was going to say smash that like button.
Boom. Anytime you want to hear that, just let us know.
It's my text tone. Oh, God. Careful.
It's his party horn.
Let's not make me have to edit a shit ton, please.
Well, we'll go ahead and say goodbye. You don't know God.
I hate you because of the way you are.
I don't like you because you don't believe in God, math.